All right, so my name is Rachael Suddarth, and I am the current president of ISHA. And today we're going to share just a little bit about some of the legislative issues that have been applicable to our profession this legislative session. And I am joined by Kevin, who is our treasurer, and Ashley, who is the president-elect. And so we'll go over a few different legislative priorities, and then we will have an opportunity for questions or comments in general about the legislative session this year. So today, kind of the culmination of a lot of work, we have been working on an interstate compact that would allow us to practice in states that also are part of the Interstate Compact without having to get an additional license. We did receive a grant from ISHA to fund this legislative work. And today it was debated on the House floor and has passed. And so it will be moving to the Senate in the next few weeks. So kind of the way Iowa's legislative system works is that we have a very truncated legislative session compared to most states, and that is in large part because of our agrarian history and the fact that a lot of farmers really do still serve in the legislature. So we have the session basically divided into half, and for most bills, you have the first half to get it through your respective house, and then the second half to pass things that the other set got it taken care of. So basically, we had until next week to get this Interstate Compact passed out of the House and moved on to the Senate. And so we've passed that first hurdle. We've made it through the first funnel. And so the Senate will then pick up any bills that the House passed to begin working on. And so we're going to have to go through the same process in the Senate, where it's going to go to a subcommittee and then a committee, and then hopefully again to the floor to be voted on by the Senate and then passed to the governor. And so our job is about 50% done with getting it passed. After, if it gets passed and signed by the governor, it just means that we then enter the executive rule creation for this particular compact. And so even though it's been passed, there'll still be additional work that needs to take place before it's fully implemented in the state. The other thing that's important to know about the Interstate Compact is that it requires at least 10 states to sign on. And so hopefully that will be happening this year, where we will be contributing to that 10 states, that special number, to make sure that it happens. And so we'll continue to keep membership updated as it's passed in other states as well. And again, any state where it's passed will be able to practice without an additional license. Yeah, Emily, yeah, we're so excited that we were able to do it and that ASHA was able to provide us that money. It meant that we could have additional lobbying support. So lobbyists who are able to help us pass it through the legislative branch, but also to help us solve problems when other organizations maybe wanted to change language. So we worked together with ASHA and our lobbyists to make sure that it happened. Are there any questions about the Interstate Compact? There are, you can always just pop them into the chat box.
I'll just jump on the microphone if that's
okay. Absolutely.
Who are the 10 states again?
Ooh,
will be
great question. I know where it failed last year, but I'm not sure who passed it last year. What I can do is I could look up that additional information, or maybe Natalie, maybe you have that.
I can Google too.
Sorry, I think Natalie's on it. I saw her lips moving, I think, saying that she's on it.
I'm grabbing it real quick here.
Okay, perfect.
I believe
Rachel, maybe one thing I was going to say, Rachel, just it might be a good idea for the recording to also say what the Interstate Compact is and what it would do for our members. And so really what it would do is allow us to, with the other states that we've joined a compact with, to utilize our licensures in their states, which would help a lot for military spouses or people who have to relocate for their jobs, that they don't, to help with reciprocity and say that if you're part of this compact, we have the same standards. We all, our licensure is valid in your state as long as we've entered this compact together.
And telepractice too, yes. So it'll allow us to really expand our opportunities for telepractice. Because currently there are a lot of hurdles for us to use telepractice as a tool, trying to navigate the different states and where we have to have licensure to complete that.
Have they hammered out the cost of would the cost of our licenses change depending on states, or have they, or how frequently we need to renew our licenses? Has that been brought up at all, or has that changed at all? Did anybody know?
No, so that's not part of that licensure compact piece. And again, who knows what might happen in the administrative rule process, but as part of the actual compact, it is not tied to a set amount of money. It is not tied to, it's not going to change anything about our license. Like our license already matches or exceeds what's in that interstate compact. It's not a change to the general license in Iowa or the process for getting that license in Iowa. And really what the license is really all about is just the idea that we can take our license and they're saying it's okay for you to practice here, right? That an Iowa license is good enough to provide services in Nebraska or in Utah or in Nevada. So the red means the legislation is active in the House right now, right? Or
Yes.
active in the state. Some of these states, it did fail last year, but the hope is that this year they'll be more successful in the legislative agenda. So Emily, where do you currently hold licenses at?
Iowa, of course, and then I've maintained my Ohio license, and now I just got a South Dakota license because some of the telepractice clients we have at St. Ambrose had been in South Dakota and are still in South Dakota, and I had to get that license as well. But I could see that neither one of those states were on the Interstate Compact, so either way, I'll have to maintain licensure there.
Another interesting one maybe looking forward to is Illinois, because I know the Quad Cities, I have to be licensed in Illinois and Iowa. And so that might benefit our Quad Cities communities.
Absolutely. And I know at our clinic, when we could provide telepractice services, but not in-person services, if Illinois hadn't extended the option of telepractice for anyone with a license, right? So they changed their rules so that people could provide telepractice who are in Iowa to those in Illinois. We would have lost many clients because we wouldn't have been able to provide those services for telepractice. Yeah, so particularly in communities that are on the border, it's very important. It's nice to see that Nebraska has made moves on it, because it would allow the community on the west side of the state to provide those services across state lines as well, providing more services to those in Iowa who are more rural.
Mm-hmm. I've been in Nebraska every day this week, so that would be great.
Right? I mean, it would be huge to be able to provide those services. Absolutely. So when we're thinking about what we can do as members for this bill, the first is just to thank your representative for their vote in support of the bill. And we'll have more information later this week for members of ISHA so that you can see, well, this is exactly who voted to support it. And a quick email there would be really helpful. And that'll just come as an action alert email. And We're not going to talk to the senators yet about it because they are finishing their work before the funnel. And so they won't have time or the headspace to really respond or think about the bills that are going to be happening after the funnel. And so we'll have additional information about contacting senators or which senators need to be contacted after the first week in March. So be on the lookout for those action alerts. You know, one of the things to think about is that for some people, they don't realize that a big part of what ISHA does is this legislative piece where we really are helping our profession and helping make it easier for professionals to navigate service provision in the state of Iowa. And so, you know, if you have any colleagues who aren't part of ISHA, you know, just let them know, like, hey, we got this Interstate Compact. ISHA really is the organization that has helped see this through and make it happen. And if you wonder what happens to that dues money, most of our dues money really does go to supporting these legislative activities. And though ISHA did give us a grant, it helps provide a little bit of additional funding for our lobbying activities. And the lobbying activities that we are a part of really are about speech language pathology and audiology. And though there are other issues that sometimes we need to talk about as well as a profession, it really is a professional legislative agenda. It's not about Democrats, it's not about Republicans, it's not any of that. It is what is best for our clients in the state and how can we provide services to them. So one of the bills that we've been working on the last couple weeks is HF 604. And this is supported by Lead K. And the bill sounds really good on its face, or a large part of it does. It's really about what they would like to do is have an early language development coordinator who's going to put together a series of tools for parents and clinicians to let people know, like it's an education piece to let them know about hearing development, about language development, about literacy development, how those things go hand in hand for children who are deaf and hard of hearing. This is something that right now we are down for undecided and monitoring. And when any type of bill is introduced, we have the option of saying that we support it. We can say that we're opposed to it, or we can say we're undecided and monitoring it. And in general, we don't change what we're saying unless we think it's going to pass out of a committee or it's going to be voted on for the floor, on the floor of the House or the floor of the Senate. Part of that is it helps us remain neutral as long as we can, right? We don't want to make enemies. We don't want to fight a fight we don't have to fight, because it diminishes our ability to really advocate in other areas, right? If we need to have a voice, we want to have a big voice and not have that voice diluted. And so there are concerns about this bill. Some of those concerns include the advisory committee. Part of the concerns are that almost 100% of members need to be fluent in ASL. They are, in other states, the legislation has focused on requiring ASL as a component in the education of deaf and hard of hearing students. And ISHA's concern and the concern of members is that it is removing choice from parents, because most children who are hard of hearing, their parents opt for oral instruction. They want oral instruction. They want spoken English. They want their child in a mainstream classroom. And ASL is not something that they are pursuing. Not that they don't know it exists, but they're children of hearing families who would like their child to have those same experiences that they've had. And so our concern about this particular bill is that it no longer provides choice. And we already have a system in place in Iowa. You know, the AEAs are a really great tool and resource for gathering information. And in fact, AEAs have already put together much of this information. It's not shiny and slick and easy to give parents. And I absolutely understand that. But we've already done that research, and hiring someone else, spending $1 million on it or more to make this, to accomplish this, doesn't seem like the best use of resources. And we have to think about what's best for all kids in Iowa. And so right now we're undecided and monitoring, because the information we have is that it's not going to be moving past the funnel. It's not going to be voted on the House floor, but it's something we want members to know about. Something that we've seen several times over the last few years, and it's going to be an issue that keeps coming up. Are there any questions about this or any additional information? I don't know, Kevin, how much you've been following it.
No, I think you covered it pretty well.
Okay.
I have a couple questions. So
Yes.
who were the people that wrote the bill? Because I'm assuming whoever wrote the bill has some type of vested interest in having an advisory committee be all ASL members. And then 2, why do you think that this will, when you said that this will keep popping up again, what makes you think that you'll continue to see something that looks like this bill in the future?
Absolutely. So Lead K really is an organization that I will not say everyone thinks this in the organization, but many people in the organization see ASL as the only language children who are deaf and hard of hearing should be pursuing, right? That is the language they should be being taught in school. It is in part being supported by the School of the Deaf and Blind here in Iowa. And though we don't know some of the information, part of it is that enrollment over time at the School of the Deaf has declined and continued to decline over the years as more and more parents have chosen mainstream. So it's a way for them to continue to be relevant and continue to have students who are attending there. It is just a very pro ASL, supportive that the deaf community, cultural identity, the viewpoint that being deaf is not a disability, just a difference. And so that head organization that is at a national level, it's a national organization that has local chapters, statewide chapters. They just have a very pro-deaf culture, pro-ASL, ASL as the best option for all children agenda, I will say. And the reason we think it's going to continue coming up is that what we've seen nationally is that it's not just coming up once in one state, it's many, many states who are seeing these same kinds of bills. And this bill has come up repeatedly in Iowa, and just experience in Iowa is that in general, things will keep coming up and keep coming up and keep coming up until they get passed. And so we don't know that it's going to come back next year for the legislative session, but it has come back every year for the last 4 years, or every other year for the last 5, maybe is the most accurate description. And so it's kind of like the DNA of the organization that's supporting this legislative action. They are recruiting legislators who don't know a lot about the issue, but it sounds really good, right? We're going to help students who are deaf and hard of hearing make big gains in reading and language, but they don't know enough about it. So one of the reasons we know that the House bill is not going to move is that one of the major players on that committee, she has children who have hearing loss. And so she can see from firsthand experience that this isn't going to play out the way we think, because I know that my children needed options and I know what I needed to pick that was best for my child. And often in Iowa, those are the kinds of things that matter the most. Is, do we have a senator or a representative who has some experience with our profession or with a particular disability, because they often have the bigger voice in being able to say, hey, I'm not sure this is going to do what we think it's going to do. So Emily, I think that all of those things are playing a role in why we'll continue to see this bill, and also why it's not a very good fit for Iowa. It's a bill that in the exact same language has been introduced other places. And so it's not even customizing it to the type of education system that Iowa has. So.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
You're welcome.
The concern that only having an advisory committee that is only ASL, that there should be choice, and that you would want an advisory committee to represent that choice, not be just one approach to teaching language and literacy.
Absolutely. Yeah, because I would love us to have a really great resource for parents who have children who are deaf of hard of hearing. But with that money, you could just give it to an AEA, and an AEA would absolutely put together those same materials that could be used statewide, without an advisory council, without an additional law to be set into place, right? That's an executive directive with money that's already there, as opposed to a legislative process. And we have IDEA for a reason. We have IEPs for a reason. We have all of these levels of protection for children that this bill certainly does not discuss and is not part of the language. So every year we're talking about music therapy, and every year they're bringing slightly different bills every single time. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background about music therapy and where we're at this year with music therapy. So there is a nationwide concern that music therapists frequently bill the same codes as speech language pathologists for services, which means that our patients cannot receive services from speech language pathologists on the same day. So if a patient has had a stroke and they're receiving speech language pathology services, we go in to provide treatment in language. It turns out that a music therapist has already been there and billed our language code, then we can't provide services. So there are some, I'll say that there are some bottom line economic issues that have been challenging nationwide. We've not seen this in Iowa, but that's kind of an overarching piece. Previously, music therapy has brought licensure bills to Iowa in an attempt to get those passed, and they include language that says their scope of practice includes things like language and cognition, treatment and assessment of those areas. Music therapists do not have coursework or treatment experience that would allow them to provide treatment or assessment in language and cognition. And so over the past few years, we have successfully stopped those licensure bills from moving forward, in part because they do conflict with our own license. But they conflict with their own license because we have the training and education to provide those services. And we have extreme concern for our patients who may not be receiving the level of care that they need to regain abilities post-trauma if they're seeing a music therapist instead of a speech language pathologist. This year, they have introduced something different. And instead of trying to create a license, which they have seen a lot of pushback from, they are really just moving a credential requirement. And it's just saying that if you claim to be a music therapist, you have to be a board certified music therapist. And there is a national certifying board for music therapists. And so really it's just saying, if you're a music therapist, if you're using that title, it means you have to be board certified, so that people can't just say, I'm a music therapist, I'm going to do music therapy now. And so this does not talk about areas of treatment. This does not talk about diagnosis. This does not talk about anything related to what their scope of practice is. All it is recognizing that music therapists are board certified individuals. And if you see that word or those words, music therapists, you should trust that they are music therapists. At this point, we remained undecided and made no comment about it. And it did pass the House chamber 89-4. Part of that was, again, if we need political capital, we have to pick where we're going to be at. And if this was a licensure bill, then we would have been very active and we would have been against that licensure if it read the same as it has previously. The other thing is that the Music Therapy National Association has changed their language about what codes to use, and they are directing their music therapists to use different codes than what fall in our scope of practice. And so even at the national music therapy level, they have changed the way they are addressing some of the concerns that speech language pathologists have had and occupational therapists have had in other states. Again, this hasn't been a concern here in Iowa, but we want to make sure that our scope of practice is protected so that we can make sure clients have the best services possible. So now what's going to happen with this bill is it's going to move over to the Senate, because after the funnel moves over to the Senate, and it's going to go through the same process where it'll be in a subcommittee, then it will move to a committee. And finally, if it passes those two steps, then it would move to the Senate floor for a vote. And then if passed, go to the governor for her to sign it into law. But yeah, this isn't a license. This is really just acknowledging that music therapists do have specialized training. Any questions about music therapy? All right, what's next? Advocacy Day, yay! So usually Advocacy Day is in person. It's a nice time to meet together, meet students who are master's students, graduate students who are pursuing degrees in speech language pathology and audiology, and being able to talk to legislators. Well, this year, that's not going to be able to happen. The state capitol is, many people do not wear masks there. It's not really like safe for a giant gathering of people. If you've never been to the Iowa Capitol, the building is beautiful, but it is very compact in the grand scheme of Capitol buildings. Quite lovely, but it is jam-packed. And so we are doing Advocacy Day online. We are providing CEUs for this event, and it is going to have some information from me, which might be similar to this information, but that's okay. You can hear it again for CEUs. Sarah Cheney, who is our VP of Government Colleges and Universities, and then one of our lobbyists, Kate, Walton will be presenting about Advocacy 101. And Kate has, we have new lobbyists this year. I guess that's what I will say. And so even if you've been with ISHA for a while, you've never met Kate before probably. So it would be great if you hop on and see who Kate is and meet her and talk to her some. She represents AEA and other groups that are similar to us in many ways. And so she'll be talking about advocacy. And we will also have Representative Joe Mitchell and hopefully some others join us for this time. It's always, we never quite know what the schedule is going to be like on any day in the Capitol, because there are surprise caucuses and there are surprise meetings and things we don't necessarily expect. And so all we can do is hope for other representatives, but I'm not really sure until day of, because schedules change so quickly. And but that time will provide a lot of information about Iowa overall, advocacy as a profession, and why it's so important as speech language pathologists and audiologists to be a part of that process. And then any updates to legislation that will be happening. And this happens after the funnel, and so we'll have a better idea of all of the bills that have made it through. Yeah, any questions about Advocacy Day? I think you should have received some emails about registering for Advocacy Day. And if you haven't, you can let me know, or ISHA at isha.org, and Natalie would be happy to send you that information as well. And if you're a member of ISHA, those CEUs are free and are part of your membership benefits. So one final thing that I want to say before we have our final slide here is that moving forward, ISHA will be kind of creating our new strategic plans for the next 2 to 3 years. And we're going to be doing that in September. One of the things that we're going to be sending out to membership are things that are, what are legislative concerns and priorities for our membership, right? So we know the basics about, like, we want to keep our licenses, and we want to make sure that we get paid for what we do. And we want to make sure that our clients are protected. But there may be some other issues that you think are important for us to pursue. And so there'll be, these surveys aren't going to go out till like summer, but I just wanted to just shot across the bow, just so you know that that's something to look for, because we do want our members to have input into that strategic planning process, and for us to really think about and focus on what are your priorities, as well as for the organization, so that we can grow and we can adapt and we can better meet the needs of all members in our association. So if you have any questions, you can always email me. You can email isha@isha.org, and Natalie can forward that to me if you can't find my email. I don't know, my email address is probably on the website under my face. Think that's true, Natalie, or is that not true?
It is. It's in the directory as well. If you go to
Okay.
the
I'm sure you can find me. Are there any other questions?
Okay, I'll go again. So I guess when I think of advocacy, right, I think of what we're talking about here as, those state level and national level legislative decisions, and, providing input on that. But then I also think about advocacy at a much smaller scale. And I think a lot of us, myself included, struggle with knowing how to advocate just within your week-to-week duties, your yearly responsibilities. And I guess I just think that, right, how do we get people realizing how important and critical these conversations are, right? Because I think it's we have the power to change so much through our advocacy, but then people don't show up and people don't engage. And, like, so kind of multiple questions there. Like, how do we get people interested and excited in seeing the power of this stuff? And is it possible that maybe some of that excitement could happen if we're helping them understand how to advocate at their job, right? And then taking those skills and then kind of broadening them up again and showing how you can advocate at the state level, which makes state level decisions and national decisions. I don't know. I just think advocacy is something that few of us have ever received training on. And I think our field has a lot of work to do in terms of helping us all know how to advocate and where to advocate and when to advocate. So kind of just throwing that out there as a discussion thing to hear some of your guys' thoughts on that.
I think that's a really great point, Emily. And certainly I have a heart for that as well. The idea that as a profession, we often do not have these conversations. And I think part of it is that we are such a female majority professions as a whole, speech language pathology and audiology together, that often those social equity struggles have played a role in how much we feel we can advocate and the roles that we can take on. And I think that that is a tough pattern to break. But no, I would love to see training at our convention about what does advocacy look like? What does it look like in my job? What does it look like for families? What does it look like in my community? And even more local levels of government, even what does it look like for me to talk to the school board? What does it look like for me just to email them and say, hey, I have some real concerns? What does it look like to have to email the State Board of Education because you're concerned about the services of students being provided who's on the same IEP, like who's being seen by one of the teachers on the IEP team that you're a part of? And I think that we don't talk about that. We talk about that sometimes ethics issues, right? Like, well, this is our ethical choice, but sometimes it is more fine-grained than that. And really what it needs is another professional to say, hey, why don't we try this? Why do we have to do it the same way? And I think it's very challenging. But no, I would love to see advocacy at that level and that kind of training happen as well. What are some other people's thoughts?
I definitely think you bring up a great point. Advocacy happens on multiple levels, whether it be on your individual daily life in your local communities, going up to state and national levels. And I think if you're going to be involved, people should be involved in all tiers. And one barrier that you mentioned was training. And really, advocacy sounds like such a daunting issue, but really I've noticed it just takes one person or a group of people who are really passionate about a certain topic. Or so, for example, in a local community, you're passionate about the clients and patients you serve, and you're passionate for providing them the best care. And what steps can we do in your own community to help make sure that they're getting equitable care that is, and just in general, just equitable care. And I think not everyone has those tools, so it'd be really great to create more resources and identify ways to show you that it seems daunting, but there's a support system. And of course, my dog is talking. But yeah, I think it's definitely something that we could perhaps do more, engage students and early career professionals as well to present a united front.
Your dog just has a lot to say about this topic. He knows advocacy is important.
Yes.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with everything that you guys said. I would think for myself, part of the reason that I just now starting to really understand about advocacy, legislative affairs, that kind of thing, is really just a misunderstanding or a lack of understanding about how the process works. And so I think until more of us understand that it's not some big mysterious process about, contacting our representatives or contacting school boards and state boards and that kind of thing. I think if we can maybe establish a process or a script or something to make it seem less daunting, I think you might have further buying, like, oh, this isn't quite as difficult as I maybe thought it was.
Definitely. And I think it's when you see results from your advocacy, I think it's easier to then want to continue in that. And just, sometimes I think the state level stuff, the process takes so much time that you can kind of forget in the process of, what you were doing. And I don't know, the more and more that we keep talking about burnout and, not only making sure that our patients and our students have equitable services, but that we ourselves have equity in our work and, the type of compensation that we receive. I just think that, especially thinking about how COVID has impacted so many professionals and made some professionals have to stop working and, take care of family and all of these other issues that I think we are going to see an impact in the future of people who maybe aren't willing to put up with what they put up with in the past. And I don't know, I'm hoping that we can, as within fields of SLP and audiology, learn how to have some of these difficult conversations that we've avoided so many years, right? Like, why did we accept for so long that we just worked in a hallway or in a coat closet?
That's right.
Why have we done that? But I think that those were opportunities for advocacy, some small scale opportunities that none of us or few of us, I feel like, had the skills to do. So yeah, anything that we can do to think about advocacy at multiple levels, I would love to support and to continue brainstorming and coming up with materials that we could use for people.
And another thing is, as an early career professional, my previous experience was on the National NISLA board. And that's one thing that I know National NISLA was really passionate about, teaching students, especially how to advocate and provide them with resources that show them that it's not hard to talk to your legislator. It's not as hard as you think it is. And I think starting even with them a little bit, but continuing it through our more seasoned professionals is also important as well. And I think a lot of us have really started channeling our frustrations positively through our advocacy, which I think is pretty cool as well.
Absolutely. And any conversation, sometimes we feel stuck in the structures that we're in instead of thinking about how do we change the structures that we're in. Sometimes we think we have less control than we really do. That really we are pretty independent professions in many ways. What I found working at a school is no one really knew what I did. And they just, I remember the principal was like, oh, I love seeing you work with her. Right. And I was like, you don't know what I do. That's okay. You're going to let me keep doing it. So part of it is sometimes recognizing that people don't know what we do. And that's a first step in advocacy, is just how do we help people know? And I know that, on a national level, that's something that ISHA has been talking about, but I'm not sure how much we talk about on a local or community level, what we really do. I know at St. Ambrose, I know many faculty don't really know what we do over in our building with our clinic. We're mysterious healthcare professional, right? And it's because they've never had a speech language pathologist who has been needed in their life. And so we're kind of a black box of magic over there. Yeah, and also why we love to do what we do, right? We have huge impact on not only the individuals we serve, but the communities, and giving them a voice. I was reading a book to my kids about Stephen Hawking, and I knew that he was British, but I thought, why do I just believe that he is American? And it's because he had an American accent for his AAC device. And so the only voice I would have ever heard in my lifetime is the recording of the American Voice. And I just kept like crying. I'm a crier. So I was like crying through this book and my kids were like, oh, it's a cryy book. Mom loves those. But it's one of those things where I could tell them, you know, like this is a huge part of what my profession does that people don't realize. They don't realize we bank people's voices. They don't realize we help them give communication devices that use people's real voices so they can maintain that, so that their kids don't grow up and think they're a different nationality than they are. And it's just, I don't know, I am excited about what we do. And I don't know how much we're talking to people about why we love what we do and why we're in the profession that we're in, why we chose it. And that means that people who are in high school, maybe communities that we are working with, they're not seeing the possibilities of our profession, not stepping into that. And we're maybe losing out on really making our profession more diverse because we're not having those conversations and we're not being a part of the conversation, showing what a great job it really is. Because how many people grow up knowing a speech language pathologist? Not very many people. And they don't see that work that we do, or that it's an excellent job to have, audiology or speech language pathology. I don't want to leave audiologists out. I'm not trying to. I try my best. Any other questions or thoughts?
Just a comment that I just appreciate all of the hard work that you guys are doing, and very, very thorough job explaining all of the different legislative updates that we've got going on. I feel very much more informed than I was before tonight's session. And just, again, want to thank you guys for everything that you do to help advocate for ourselves and for our clients.
Good. Thanks so much, Emily, for all of your input. It's really great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so our next town hall will be in 2 weeks with legislative forum for the medical side of the profession. And then 2 weeks after that, we'll be having an audiology forum as well. So look for those in your email if you are interested in joining those conversations. Ashley, is just going to be a basic overview about kind of the state of how things are right now in healthcare and some of the things that ISHA might be able to help.
Yeah, like I said, we're gonna have a meeting tomorrow and kind of hash out the specifics. I, of course, have 10,000 ideas and I need to parse it down, but something along those lines. Yeah, you'll have to join and find out. It'll be exciting.
Thank you, Ashley. And Kevin, I know that you guys have already met. What's kind of your overview?
Sure. So for audiology, what we're really trying to get at is improving audiology engagement and audiology member engagement from ISHA members and even potentially non-ISHA members who could join on board. So what we are really focusing on is what does ISHA do for members? We want to touch on a little bit of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, how to be involved, but the end of it, we just want to be a listening session to see what do audiologists want to see, how can we best support our audiologists, and what are you interested in terms of programming or convention ideas as well, just so we can help support audiologists even further.
Excellent. Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, so look for those emails if you're interested in joining either of those forums. Just sign up and we'd love to have you. If you need to review this recording, Natalie, you're just going to send out the link.
Yes, it'll go out to members. They'll be on the member portal. So
Okay.
you'll have access. If you have any trouble accessing the member portal, contact us at any time and we can help reset passwords and get you connected there to those resources.
Excellent. Thanks so much. So if you need anything, just contact us and we're good at responding. We may not know the answer, but we'll tell you that.
We'll try to find it.
We will try to find out. Well, have a great night, guys.
Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you.